Good afternoon, LinkedIn. How are you? How's everyone doing? Today, I have my friend Emerson with me. We're going to talk a little about how to use HubSpot's scoring tool for customer health. Hey, Emerson, how are you
Hey,
doing today?
good. Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to share a little bit more about this. I'm still pretty new to it, but got the general idea.
Yeah, we're all learning together.
Yeah, exactly.
If you have any questions about customer health or the HubSpot scoring tool, feel free to drop a note in the comments. We'll do our best to answer live. Anything we can't answer live, we will be happy to follow up on. And I always say our DMs are open. So if you have questions, feel free to shoot us a message before, after, during, all of the above as well. Emerson, I'm really excited to have you here. I know I tell you this all the time. You always bring something super cool to the table. You're always thinking about things in a different way, which is super exciting. But I'm especially excited to talk about customer health because I think people tend to look at HubSpot scoring as lead scoring. And it's often looked at as a tool for the sales team for like net new leads.
Yep.
But there is so much more you can do with it. um,
Yep.
I feel like it took me even years to know that you could create a second score. Like I thought there was just the HubSpot score. You had one shot at scoring
Mhm.
people and that was it. That is not the case, and it's definitely not the case in the new tool. Um, you can create multiple scores. Obviously, a lot of companies have the lead score for the sales team and sales handoff, but customer health score, do you want to tell me a little bit about how you're using it, what you're using it for, stuff like that?
Yeah. So ultimately, I wanted to be able to answer the question of what accounts should the customer success team prioritize. Um, I think with their goals are obviously, reducing churn. So they want to make sure renewals are high and they're proactively addressing any account issues before renewals come up. We want to make sure, and then expansion opportunities, right? And so my goal was to build a score that kind of helps them achieve those core goals of
Mhm.
theirs. And it wasn't. It can be pretty challenging. I mean, kind of the weird thing is in RevOps, like there's like a baseline question of, in your CRM, show me who your customers are. And that can sometimes be a difficult question to answer. And I always find that customer success operations are like I consider them the most difficult, like of the GTM operations,
Yeah.
because in sales and marketing, you for the most part you have people who kind of know their tools and can use them, and there's not a lot of. But in customer success, all of a sudden you're introducing like a financial system potentially, or a
Mhm.
customer database, or whatever.
Mhm.
And so, and then you get really siloed data centers, and that can be very challenging to bring it all together and to give, our customer success team before the customer success, before I introduced the scoring and there's a lot of background work that went into making the score effective. But before that, for a rep to be able to identify their like account health, they needed to go into each record and then go into the multiple systems to figure out, have they paid their bill? Are they using the product, or what have you? And then, combining that with what's going on, like when was the last time we contacted them in HubSpot and all that kind of stuff, right?
Mhm.
And there was no way at scale for them to be able to look at all their accounts and say, okay, here are my unhealthy accounts, here are my healthy accounts, here are the ones that need more attention. And so I essentially built this to answer those questions.
Very cool. Very cool. And so you're connecting, you know, data from all over, right?
Mhm.
Are you using APIs, integrations, a combination?
Yeah, it's a combination. So I actually had to have our engineering team build API endpoints for me to tap into our proprietary customer database. And then I
Mhm.
had to build custom integrations with our financial platform. Not everybody's going to have the ability to do that, but there are some. I mean, I do think everybody has the ability to do that, especially with large language models and AI to help. But there
Emerson's
are
like, even you.
there are some tools that can make it easier. And one of the key tools that I use is Coefficient,
Mhm.
and that it acts as a middleware between the different platforms. So if you have an external platform that has API endpoints for you to attach to, then Coefficient can tap into those, and then essentially what it does is it builds a database in Google Sheets. If you have a lot of records, it might not be the most effective because Google Sheets can slow down with, once you're above, 150,000 records or so. But I think if you have 150,000 customers, awesome. But I think most people don't. And so it can be a pretty effective solution and a low cost solution to kind of connect all the moving parts.
Cool. And do you have one customer health score, or do you have different scores for like renewals versus like upgrades?
Yeah. So I wanted to have multiple health scores is your wonderful lessons on lead scoring, using those multiple scores is really insightful and really useful. But I did find while there's a lot that's very similar in customer health
Mhm.
scoring, you can only have one customer health score unless you're enterprise,
Mm.
service hub enterprise. So we just have the one to use. Now you can break it down into groups. You lose it's you can kind of work around it though. And
Mhm.
I'll show a little bit about what I've done with mine to make it to kind of fill the gap between,
Yeah.
with just using that one score.
Yeah. Right. Do you wanna go ahead and show it? I don't
Yeah, let me share my screen and we'll walk
that
through.
way I'll stop asking hypothetical questions.
All right, let me figure out how to share this.
I'm ready.
Sharing.
You wanna get my help.
Let's go with this window here. Okay. Yeah, every video sharing platform is a little different on how they share screens. Okay. So I'll start off with, looking at where the customer health score creation is, right? So
Mhm.
in settings, you got this customer success uh, beta settings here. And then
Mhm.
you've got two options. You got your portfolio, which allows you to select the object that represent your customer accounts. It can be contacts, it can be companies. I think for a lot of folks, it's going to make sense for them to be companies. Us, it does.
Mhm.
And then you can select the owner field, and we have a custom HubSpot user property called CX owner. It's customer success owner. And so if that is set, then what that means is when a customer success rep is in their customer success workspace, it's going to
Mhm.
show them all of the accounts where they are the CX owner. And then I have you can select the property that represents the renewal date. I pull this data in from our invoicing, billing, and subscription management platform
Mhm.
Maxio. But folks who are using subscriptions and HubSpot can just use whatever or other external platform properties.
Mhm.
And then you got the health scores tab, and this is where the magic happens. But yes, you can see right here, I've reached my limit of one unless I upgrade to Service Hub Professional, which I'm not going to do. I feel like everything I need to do, I can manage and work around with just the one. So I'm going to jump into the I'll jump into the health score real quick and show you. So I'm going to enroll all companies, but you can, it might make sense for you to, if your life cycle stages are very accurate and you have your customers as your customer life cycle stages set and reliable, then you can use that. There's a couple of reasons why I chose to I just do all companies and then I filter um, basically my customer success owner field is
Mhm.
assigned, and there's some reasons for that. There's certain customers who might not necessarily be customers, to like
Mhm.
the sales team, and so that allows some flexibility. But you have some control over how you identify which companies you want. Then there's the calculation section. So if you've done any lead scoring or watched any of Casey's wonderful videos prior, then this probably looks very familiar to you. You've got the score limit. One of the things that I noticed I think is different is that the score, you have a hard limit of 100 points to assign
Yeah.
the health score here, which kind of tripped me up a little bit at first, and then I really had to, because it did feel a little bit limiting because with the one score, I really had to think a little harder about how I wanted to assign points to certain things. Um, and then this is both negative and positive group
Mhm.
scoring limits. So even if you had all negative, you'd still need to set your limit up here.
Mhm.
So I have this broken down into a couple different categories. I've got my one-on-one engagement, and this is pulling from HubSpot, activity data. I've got CSM sentiment, and what this is just a way for a customer success to essentially override the scoring and say,
Mhm.
"Hey, it's like if they gave somebody a call and they said, 'Hey, we're actually all good. We're going to pay our bill. We're a little bit behind or whatever.' And the CSM can override and say, 'Hey, this is a healthy account,' and essentially bump them up 25 points.
Mhm.
Or if everything looks good through the scoring system, and they call and this person wants to cancel, then they can put this account at risk and it'll subtract the 25 points.
Mhm.
So it's a nice way to override that. And then I've actually built a workflow that if the company will be enrolled anytime that this field changes, and then it'll be delayed for 30 days and it will be reset back to neutral. So if someone calls and they say this is a healthy account despite all this stuff, it will reset back to neutral, and then they'll only have 0 points here, and then all the scoring will put them where they're at. And I wanted to be able to do that so that someone could do this, but they have to revisit it within 30 days. This is a very temporary sort of override.
Mhm.
And then we have our proprietary database. We call it Safety Cloud, but this is where I pull in like usage activity, right? So I've got things like their last login date. If it's less than 30 days, then they're actively logging in and using us. They get 10 points. Um, if it's more than 30 days, then we'll subtract 5 points. And then how many users, right? So if they've got multiple users and it's not just one, theoretically they're more sticky. You have more people who are actively engaged in our service, then
Mhm.
it'll add 5 points. And then how many users logged in within the last 30 days, they'll get points for that. And then if it's, what do I got here? Last login. And I'm not set on these. This is
Oh.
my first kind of flow at this. And as I look at this, I'm like, I probably need to look a little closer at what's being scored there.
That's why any scoring, you wanna revisit it.
Yes, yes, definitely. And then we've got, so this was the usage data. And then
Mhm.
we have, we sell a hardware and we can see, are there devices that they have that are not like pinging, right? Is there some kind of issue where they're maybe offline? And so if like this one represents like, did they buy a device and they just never installed it and never ever used it? That's a problem, and we need to pay attention, give them a call, see if
Mhm.
that's on our end. Sometimes it's intentional. They're like, oh, we just have some extra, right? And if that's the case, then we can override that account as healthy. Um, a percentage of their devices offline. If they have more than 25%, then they're going to have, a big hit to their score.
Mhm.
Um, and then if they have less than 25%, they get a big bonus to their score.
Mhm.
So,
Um,
go ahead.
I don't think you know this answer. I'm forced the group limits plus or minus actually, I'm answering this myself. So you have that at set to 20.
Mhm.
If someone was subtracted 15 for never activating a device and subtracted 15 for the one below it, I think it would only negative 20, right?
That's correct. Yes. Yeah.
Based on what you
And part of that, while I would honestly, if this was the case, I would want this to be 30, but I had to kind of balance out between all of these,
yeah.
to because this needs to be 0 points remaining. And so I had to make sure I was doling out the full 100 across the board. Probably still some, refinement that I can do. So far, this has been good for us to figure out. It's really more about like, hey, where do we have problems right now early on that we need to address?
Mhm.
And then as we kind of target those highly at-risk accounts, then I'll probably refine this a little bit more. I'll talk in the end about like some of the changes that I am considering and may make. But this is a good way to get started for us. So if we've got anything where a cancellation ticket has been submitted, right,
Mhm.
then they're going to have, and you can see here, I'm limiting this to 20, which is, but realistically, it's like this is going to bump them down so much, 20 points if they do have anything in cancellation.
Mhm.
And then I've got billing data, and I don't have much in here right now. Really, all I'm looking at was last invoice status. If it's severely overdue, they're getting negative 25, and we
Mhm.
need to address that. If it is just overdue, 15 points. And overdue, I'm setting these properties through coefficients. So something would be considered overdue if it's past 30 days from the due date, right?
Okay.
So, um, and then, I may add a bit more here, but really like this is the most important data for us to be able to tackle.
Mhm.
So with all of that said, let's take a look at there's a couple different ways to look at this information you can do, because they're all properties essentially, like this customer health score status. Um, And let me actually show you this really quick too, because you can set these thresholds, right? So if it's 75 to 100 points, it's considered healthy. 50 to 74, it's neutral. Anything below 50 is considered at risk. And these are hard set. You just have these three options. You can call them other things, and you can change the numbers, but you get three options. Healthy.
And you can do the same with the scoring properties, just for reference.
Yep. And so, so these are stored in properties. And so the nice thing about that is you can put them in, record view, company views, lists. They also show up in the workspace, in the customer success workspace. I personally like to work from this view. I have like a customer health audit view. Right now I'm just filtering to show you the one so you don't see some private company data. But so what I've done here is I've got the company name. I froze the first two columns, which give me the status of at risk, and then the customer health score. I happen to be this account happens to be at 0 because it just landed that way. And so this is an at-risk account. And then what I've got built into this view is all of the properties. I'm just going to shrink these a little bit for ease. All of the properties that make up that score, right? So I've got a customer health description, which is just a single line text. This doesn't affect the score, but it's a nice, easy way to go in and kind of figure out, keep status on. It's account notes, essentially. Customer health status. This is where the CSMs can override, and they can say, hey, this is actually a happy customer. This one's definitely at risk. And I also have churned in there as well.
You spent some time color coding properties.
I did. Oh, I love that feature. Yeah, it's so nice. And then some of these are required. Like if someone selects churn here, they are required to fill in the churn summary. And then that gets pushed back to our invoicing platform as well. So last invoice status, right? This one's severely overdue. That's going to knock them down, quite a bit. Next invoice is due soon. This doesn't affect score, but it is a great way. If an account manager wants to look at like who's coming up, who are all my accounts where they have an invoice that's due soon, and then they can look and be like, hey, these ones are at risk. I need to prioritize getting outreach to these and getting in contact, right? And then they can see, there's 75% of this company's devices are offline. They just have one single user. So it really gives a nice, easy way to kind of see in line here and what's going on with the account, right?
Why are they at risk? Why is their score 0? You can start
and I can see in Maxio they have 5 subscriptions, so 5 seats, but 4 of them are offline. Like that's a pretty significant problem, and I would want to do some outreach here. And then you can also see this. I've set up some views here where you can see all of this stuff. The center cards are a little bit weird in that you can't always see like the full properties, but someone can hover over. And honestly, once our reps use this enough, they kind of know the particular things they're looking for. And then a nice thing is up here. You've got your customer health score, and you can see like score history and all that kind of stuff, and how what is affecting the score here as well. So nice little handy thing. Yeah. But yeah, here on the record, they can see, all they need to see. And it's really just kind of a different way of viewing the data. So
I think it's funny that you were like, I'm just kind of getting started with the I have all this stuff built, but like it's
yeah. Well, it's I think my way of building it was to get all of the connected pieces, right? Because I had to have engineering build out the API endpoints. I had to connect and pull all that data out and then push it into HubSpot. And then now I'm just starting to get the customer success managers like using this, and honestly, it's been huge already for them to, the nice thing about this is, somebody running the customer success team or even me in RevOps, I can say, hey, we have, this many accounts who have, this many devices offline or whatever, or, hey, let's do our campaign for this quarter is let's reach out to all these folks and figure out what's going on. Can we get them, help installing or what, just basically identifying. And you may find through that process, like we did, is that, for the most part, most of this is expected, which then is information for me to go and refine how I'm calculating those scoring properties. And maybe I say, maybe it's like when we consider a device offline, it's like in the last 14 days, we haven't got a signal or something like that, and I need to extend that out because that's actually very normal for our customers, right?
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like a nice kind of cyclical education process.
Yeah. I always like to ask, like, how did did you build this immediately with the customer success team? Did you kind of put a framework together and then get their input?
Yeah, it was, well, no, it was mostly me building.
Oh.
And I just kind of I overbuilt it and pulled in a lot more data than I needed. And then, I don't want this to be overwhelming for someone coming in here and looking at this. And do I need, every single one of these properties? Probably not. And this is where I would then do the refinement.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I kind of went for it. Part of the reason I needed to move and needed to get things in the system, and then and then I found too that I was missing certain things that I needed, and had to go back to the engineering team, and they exposed more properties through the endpoint, and then I was able to pull on that data. So yeah, that was the most challenging part. I mean, the simple part is building the score, and yeah, you need to think about how to score things and what's most important, and then you continually refine that. Um, I think the most difficult thing is to get a full 360 view of your customers. Like, how do you pull in this other data from potentially outside platforms? And every company is going to be different in how they solve that problem.
Mhm. Yeah. I mean, obviously, there's automated solutions. I think for a lot of companies, some of it may start manual.
Mhm.
It might be your customer success team manually saying, "This is how many devices they have. This is how many they're using,"
Yep.
before you're able to automate that too. That might.
Yeah, and you don't need to over engineer this. I mean, I think somebody who's just starting out and building customer health scores can do exactly what you're saying, which is keep it super simple. Like, it might even just be, have they been contacted in the last 30, 60,
Mhm.
90 days? And how does that impact things? And you don't need to engineer a solution to pull in usage data and billing data and anything like that, right? And if you don't, yeah, and I like the manual process too. Someone can fill in these properties manually. It's, if somebody needs to go and look, most, we have a lot of customers, but I think a lot of, if an account manager is managing, 30 customers or something like that, it's not too much of a lift to go into the invoicing platform and say, have they paid their bill? And then they can update it. And the nice thing about that is, their manager knows that this account is being actively reviewed. And that can even be a property that I might consider putting it in, is like, when was the last time that this account was reviewed? And that's just a manual date
Mhm.
field that your account rep puts in there. And if it's been within the last 30 days, then they get, 5 points or whatever. But it's definitely flexible, and it's going to be up to, each company how they want to figure out what account health means to them, and build it.
Mhm. Yeah. And do not use last modified date because that's
Right. Yes. Yeah.
that might get updated without a manual review.
I still, I mean, I've been doing this for long enough that tripped me up like the other day too, where I don't remember what I did, but yeah, I got tricked. Last
Be careful.
activity date is the one I was looking
Ooh,
at. It's not the one I wanted.
last activity date tricks me too. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So then how's the team using this? Are there workflows that trigger based on this? Is it just reviewed?
Yeah, the most right now, it's really just using like this customer health audit view.
Mhm,
And there are, I have these quick filters up here.
mhm,
Looks like I'm missing. Need to update this. Oh, they each have their own. I'm just using this as
mm,
in my example. But the quick filters would be, customer health score, right? And so
mhm,
someone can very easily come in here and filter in, let me just look at my at risk. Or
mhm,
another way is to say, all right, let's just take a look at my severely overdue, right?
mhm,
And just showing those, and then figuring out how they may want to tackle those. Or they might just be filtering for, let's take a look at who here has 25% or more of their devices offline. And it
mhm,
allows people to segment and attack attack problems,
mhm,
and very, it's like, hey, let's go through this list and figure out you know it's just reduces context switching and all that. But it was I Myself, like I like working from these views that you can, add these quick filters and quickly address issues, and reps
Mhm.
generally like it as well.
Do you know if there's a benefit of what are the benefits of building this in the customer health score versus the scoring tool, other than if you don't have marketing hub, obviously, or yeah,
I
that
mean,
would
they're
be.
going to be sunsetting those in August. That is the drawback. Okay, just between you and I really I'm sad that they're sunsetting those, because
Just between.
just between you, me, and everybody. Yeah. Yeah, they're going to be sunsetting those property-based scoring.
Mhm,
I like those a lot.
mhm,
There was a learning curve to it, but I think the advantage here, I think it is. I think this is a little bit easier to understand.
mhm,
The limitations, though, is yeah, you're really limited to that one unless you're
mhm,
paying for enterprise, and I don't know how many you get if you get bumped up to
mhm,
the next tier.
mhm,
And it forces me to consider how it would be very nice for us to say this is the usage score, right? To have
mhm,
different scoring. This is our financial health. This is our usage. Customer. Um, yeah, and then here's our activity HubSpot health, and having those split up into three would be really nice. And maybe that's a case for someone upgrading to enterprise. But
mhm,
I think likely what I will do is build, I can use coefficient and Google Sheets with formulas and things to essentially build metrics that then push back to properties and serves that purpose for me. That's one of the things I was going to say at the end of this chat,
yeah,
that I was going to say one of the changes that I'm actually considering is doing the scoring outside of HubSpot and then pushing in through properties. There's some reasons why I don't, I would much prefer to do it all within HubSpot, but
mhm,
some sacrifices have to be made sometimes.
yeah. Well, yeah. So, are there other changes other than that you're considering?
No, I mean, I think that's the main one. I'll need to continually refine. Honestly, what I would really like to do now that I've done this is build a customer health version of the lead scoring tool, like the mapping tool that you've been using and showing off.
Mhm,
I think that would be. It's just a little bit easier for me to kind of visually see everything all at once and kind of mess around with the different options and
yeah,
um, but it's just a part of the process to continually refine and get feedback from your customer success team. That's the next phase of all of this.
yeah.
So,
And then any advice for someone getting started? Um, any advice for someone getting started with this?
yeah, start really small. I put a lot of stuff in here. I'm comfortable with that, but I would start with fewer properties and just really consider what are the most potent, what are the most, and it might just be when was the last time our customers we had a conversation with them. That's probably honestly the most important
Yeah.
the one, and then from there you can have. I do like the idea of that customer success manager sentiment
Mhm.
property, and then turning that on into a workflow that will reset after a certain period of time. It's a good
Yeah.
way to just kind of keep making sure your customer success team is reaching out.
Yeah. That's smart. Yeah. Just start with even just those two. When's the last time
Yep.
they've been in contact and what's the customer success team thinks?
Yeah. And a notes field, you definitely want to have those.
Yeah. Very cool.
Yeah.
Great. Anything else, Emerson, you want to add?
No, I don't think so. I'm, as you mentioned earlier, I'm always available to answer questions, available through DM and all that. And I know Casey is too. So.
Well, thank you all for watching. Yeah, feel free to reach out if you have any questions. And hopefully, I'll get Emerson back here to show me something else cool that I've never worked with again soon.
All right. Thank you.